The Anglo-Saxon Charles Darwin, underspoken and gentlemanly, impersonal and asexual and blankly observant in his writings, was a hero in teeming, passionate, polyglot Guayaquil because he was the inspiration for a tourist boom. If it weren't for Darwin, there would not have been a Hotel El Dorado or a Bahia de Darwin to accommodate James Waite. There would have been no boutique to clothe him so comically. If Charles Darwin had not declared the Galapagos Islands marvelously instructive, Guayaquil would have been just one more hot and filthy seaport, and the islands would have been worth no more to Ecuador than the slag heaps of Staffordshire. Darwin did not change the islands, but only people's opinion of them. That was how important mere opinions used to be back in the era of great big brains. Mere opinions, in fact, were as likely to govern people's actions as hard evidence, and were subject to sudden reversals as hard evidence could never be. So the Galapagos Islands could be hell in one moment and heaven in the next. And Julius Caesar could be a statesman in one moment and a butcher in the next. And Ecuadorian paper money could be traded for food, shelter, and clothing in one moment, and line the bottom of a birdcage in the next. And the universe could be created by God Almighty in one moment and by a big explosion in the next, and on and on. Thanks to their decreased brain power, people aren't diverted from the main business of life by the hobgoblins of opinions anymore. White people discovered the Galapagos Islands in 1535 when a Spanish ship came upon them after being blown off course by a storm. Nobody was living there, nor were remains of any human settlement ever found there. This unlucky ship wished nothing more than to carry the Bishop of Panama to Peru, never losing sight of the South American coast. There was the storm which rudely hustled it westward, ever westward, where prevailing human opinion insisted there was only sea and more sea. But when the storm lifted, the Spaniards found that they had delivered their bishop into a sailor's nightmare, where the bits of land were mockeries, without safe anchorages or shade or sweet water or dangling fruit, or human beings of any kind. They were becalmed and running out of water and food. The ocean was like a mirror. They put a longboat over the side and towed their vessel and their spiritual leader out of there. They did not claim the islands for Spain, any more than they would have claimed hell for Spain. And for 3 full centuries after revised human opinion allowed the archipelago to appear on maps, no other nation wished to own it. But then in 1832, one of the smallest and poorest countries on the planet, which was Ecuador, asked the peoples of the world to share this opinion with them, that the islands were part of Ecuador. No one objected. At the time, it seemed a harmless and even comical opinion. It was as though Ecuador, in a spasm of imperialistic dementia, had annexed to its territory a passing cloud of asteroids. But then young Charles Darwin, only 3 years later, began to persuade others that the often freakish plants and animals which had found ways to survive on the islands made them extremely valuable, if only people would look at them as he did, from a scientific point of view. Only one English word adequately describes his transformation of the islands from worthless to priceless: magical. Yes, and by the time of James Waite's arrival in Guayaquil, so many persons with an interest in natural history had come there, on their way to the islands to see what Darwin had seen, to feel what Darwin had felt, that 3 cruise ships had their home port there, the newest of which was the Bahia de Darwin. There were several modern tourist hotels, the newest of which was the El Dorado, and there were souvenir shops and boutiques and restaurants for tourists, all up and down the Calle Diaz de Agosto. The thing was, though, when James Waite got there, a worldwide financial crisis, a sudden revision of human opinions as to the value of money and stocks and bonds and mortgages and so on, bits of paper, had ruined the tourist business not only in Ecuador, but practically everywhere. So that the El Dorado was the only hotel still open in Guayaquil, and the Bahia de Darwin was the only cruise ship still prepared to sail. The El Dorado was staying open only as an assembly point for persons with tickets for, quote, the nature cruise of the century, end of quote, since it was owned by the same Ecuadorian company which owned the ship. But now, less than 24 hours before the cruise was to begin, there were only 6 guests, including James Waite, in the 200-bed hotel. And the other 5 guests were Zenji Hiraguchi, 29, a Japanese computer genius; Hisako Hiraguchi, 26, his very pregnant wife, who was a teacher of ikebana, the Japanese art of flower arranging; Andrew McIntosh, 55, an American financier and adventurer of great inherited wealth, a widower; Selena McIntosh, 18, his congenitally blind daughter; and Mary Hepburn, 51, an American widow from Ilium, New York, whom practically nobody in the hotel had seen because she had stayed in her room on the 5th floor and had taken all her meals up there, since arriving all alone the night before. The 2 with stars by their names, that's Zenji Hiraguchi and Andrew McIntosh, would be dead before the sun went down. This convention of starring certain names will continue throughout my story, incidentally, alerting readers to the fact that some characters will shortly face the ultimate Darwinian test of strength and wiliness. I was there too, but perfectly invisible.